Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're at. Happy Thursday. Awesome to have you here with us for Cut the Shit, Cue the Genius. This is episode 3, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, because we started point 5. But Liz and Bruno and myself, we just want to say good morning and also to take just a moment. I know that there's a lot of people hurting, not only parents, but with everything going on in the last couple of days, just make sure a couple of things. Hug your little ones super, super close. And I mean tight until they just scream or like just say, get off of me kind of thing, no matter how old they are. And also just make sure that you check in on your teams because everybody is hurting inside, and give them space to either take the time to process or have them process together or do office hours, open office hours, something that will just have that connection. Give them the day off if you can. So just wanting to put that out there at the moment. So today we are going to be talking about building future resilient brands. And we had a huge discussion, which is kind of interesting. Good morning, Peggy. Because we usually start like discussing the guts of the of the webisode at like 30 minutes before, and I have a feeling, Liz and Bruno, that maybe we should be recording those sound bites because there's a lot that comes from it as well. Hello, Sean. Greetings to you, a wonderful one. And but what we want to discuss is the first and foremost, we're going to try to define what we mean by brand, as well as share tips, not only brand as in the brands that you hear out there, like, your Pepsis and your Nikes. We're all Pepsis and Nikes in our own way, but also from a supplier perspective, as well as your own brand and your own credibility within the organization that you're in, and also event brands. And I'm thinking, is the LinkedIn user that's saying good morning right now, if it's Ray Baum, I hope the how to worked. Everybody's laughing at the moment. But so Bruno, for you, like real quick, what do you consider a brand at the moment?
I think it's everything that people perceive about you.
Mm-hmm.
It's, the way you work, the way you comport yourself, what you're uh, spouting out on social media. It's everything that one would associate with you personally. And I think the same is true for a company. It's how you treat your clients, how you, just exist in the world, in the business world, one way or the other. I think a lot of it is about perception.
Yeah, definitely. Liz, what about you?
I would agree. I think the only thing maybe I would add is it's also the things you don't say, the things you don't speak up on and the assumptions. People are always making assumptions and judgments, and they're only seeing whatever you're posting or not posting for a split second. And so, whether it's online or in social media or in person, I think everything contributes to what a person thinks about you. And it either becomes very positive and rosy. And in those cases, you can almost say things that other people can't say because people assume the good. Or it
Yeah.
could be the other way. They assume the bad, and everything you could say the best thing and everyone's like, oh, they're just trying to get attention or, So I find that social media, while it can be so great for brands, and I think all three of us have seen the success of that over the last decade, it also can, I think it's just caused so many issues. And I guess the way we opened the episode too, and just thinking about society, my mind is in a lot of places right now, but good and bad.
Yeah.
But brands specifically, I think could be, it's everything, said
Yeah.
and unsaid things.
I agree with you, and I'd love to know what Sean and Kiki, hi Kiki, and Peggy and our anonymous LinkedIn user, what they think or what they can define as brands, or just even what what factors go into brand at the moment. So the big question here, and here's the reality. So we went through a couple of years of real hardships, with the Corona coaster, et cetera. And the writing's on the wall with the recession or something like it. So let's not, maybe it's not going to happen. Who knows? But it looks like it will. And what we want to make sure of is that our event profs and listeners are really focusing and planning out what their brand or what their credibility and their deliverables are going to be to their clients, to their prospects, to even their own team. One thing that I've realized, excuse me, is that a lot of professionals, especially on the supplier side or agencies like ours, are starting to push back or say no. Say no in the sense of, we can't do that. We don't have enough brainwidth to do it. And do you think that this is, how should they massage that? Because they've been saying yes for such a long time. So like, how do they massage it to a point where they do become future resilient, but still hold up to the credibility that they have in the past?
I think Lindsay had some good answers for that.
Yeah.
We should bring in our lifeline.
Bring in our life.
Yay, Lindsay's back. So we have our lifeline, Lindsay. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Preach,
Before we
preach.
What?
Oh, nothing. I'm reading the comments. I'm like, I'm multitasking when I shouldn't be, because there's so many interesting things happening all over the social media as I'm sitting here listening to you all talk, which is, again, one of my favorite things about digital. You can get it from all of it. It's like being at the best happy hour in the world, except that I can't like have you all next to me.
Well, you know what? We can have happy hour 24/7 because we are built that way. But before we start, and if nobody knows Lindsay, everybody should know Lindsay. Lindsay, can you introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. My name is Lindsay Martin-Bilbrey. I'm a meeting planner who's also a recovering marketer who loves ice sculptures and dry bar. And I own my own agency. I live here deep in the heart of Texas, which is kind of a good and a bad thing this week because I'm right there with you, Dahlia. And, it's been something where I was lucky enough to travel across these United States over the last 20 years and work in the association, the government, and the corporate space. And so I survived. I'm not selling real estate. I'm still here in the event marketing world, and I'm really exciting. I love you too, Kiki, about, what's coming next. So when Dahlia reached out and said, let's talk about brand resiliency and events and marketing, I was like, yes, I volunteer as tribute because I loved your show.
All right, share with us, this is all about helping our loved ones in the industry, and especially those that are coming in that don't have a holy shit moment. What did I get myself into? Kind of thing, which happens all the time. So share with us how do we get there? How do we say no? How do we protect our core?
I mean, I think especially if you're a new person coming into the industry, it's a great time to enter into the marketplace. Like, the industry is really experiencing another round of rebirth. You'll hear those of us that have been around for a while. We talk about it happens every 4 to 6 years, depending on recessions. But I think Michelle brought up a really great point earlier. We don't learn some of those lessons as well as I think we could have from where do we go and how are we really continuing to experiment. We go back to what's safe. And as a new person with new eyes and rose-colored glasses, you want to take it on and help change and blow the space up. And we love that. We need you and your ideas and your excitement and your energy. At the same time, if you're a freelancer, an independent, or an agency for the first time, you have so much freedom that you tell that corporate client, oh, absolutely. And then you go and you live through the nightmare that Liz was just talking about, where they've looked at almost 80 venues. And for 150 people, the minimum buyout is $150,000. And you haven't even gotten into the nitty gritty of it. You can't solve every problem. You cannot do everything. And if you're an agency or an independent planner of one, you definitely can't. This is a team sport. It has always been a team sport. So you need to be reaching out to your network and really drawing those lines. For those of us on the other side that have been doing this a long time, we have to remember, because many of us, our teams have scaled down dramatically. The resources we've counted on for years, many of them aren't in the industry anymore. And so we're having to forge new partnerships. And that is scary as hell, because some of my vendors I've had since like the 1999 zone. Like,
Since you were a kid.
thank you. Like, what do we do? That person that will always, call my show, it's like Brant. Brant is left. He's the last man standing as far as some of the network. And I'm like, oh God. And so he's wonderful, but he's one man. And I think that's important. And the corporate planners, helping them get into that headspace. Or if you are a corporate planner, you might be the only one left standing in your organization, and you're reaching out, trying to build that network and having those internal conversations. So I think, that's a lot. It's a lot of moving pieces. So
it totally is. And, to your point, when you are looking at your resources or your teams, I've also seen it where people have brought in freelancers and it's hurt their brand, because, everybody wants to work. Having, especially on the virtual side. So having, saying that I'm a DESer or I am a CMP, or having a certification of some kind that is on the wall, for example, does not necessarily mean that you are professional enough to, and when you bring them into their team, you actually realize that it's not a great extension to your brand, if you will. It actually can hurt your brand. So, I mean, how do you vet out the partners or the team members that you are bringing in to, for that team sport, like you said?
So 2 ways is something we always do. One, do they have a portfolio? If they've got digital work, there's a portfolio somewhere. There's a sizzle reel, there's a clip. I mean, yeah, the backstage pictures aren't great. Like, it could be as easy as them like taking a picture of the million sticky notes and the 17 monitors. But like any of you worth your salt, you should be able to show a portfolio and have a couple of clients say, yeah, they did that. And here was the good, here was the bad, and here's where we went from here, right? The flip side of that is, our events world is not really that big in the grand scheme of things. Ask a friend. Like, I could go out and
call a lifeline.
Yeah, like Michelle Bruno is a great example. She and I think, have peripherally, I've known about her for years. She does great work. And until about 2 days ago, we weren't connected on LinkedIn, but I knew of her. I knew the things she did. And if someone had recommended me to her or vice versa, I would have been like, oh yeah, like I still would have done my due diligence, but there's enough inside the echo chamber. I would have been like, I don't have as much hesitation to reach out and call that human to rely upon, versus somebody who just came out of nowhere. Now, the nowhere person could still be amazing, because we've got these new emerging rock stars. And yet, I'm cynical. I'm definitely a glass half empty kind of gal, because it all doesn't work. And that's why you scenario plan. So I think that's, ask for the work, have them show you, and then ask the network, because the network will tell you all the things.
Yeah. You know that joke about the half glass empty, half full, where there's people on both sides? And then I always say, you guys are like hashing that out. I already sold that glass.
That is you.
Yes, it is. Liz, I mean, so the interesting thing is, I'm going to talk about co-opetition for a second, right? A lot of people think that Liz and Dahlia are competitors. We do the same kind of events. We are in the same, circles, same sessions, same all of that. I have never thought of Liz as a competitor at all, except when you went and you started doing like the preschool and cool stuff. I'm like, come on, Anyway, but the reason I say that is, I think right now, either from a supplier side, planner side, even from an event side, as brands, they have to think of co-opetition. And I know that term has been like floating around for a while, but the core here is, if you want to be resilient, this is the time where you take a look at partners that have an overlap of expertise, of talent, but also an extension of services that you do not have in your portfolio.
Mhm.
And then you have at it that way. Bruno, what do you think of that?
Well, it just made me think of you reaching out to your supernatural coach and like wanting to start a business venture with him. You know, it illustrates that maybe your likely partners aren't necessarily in the same business that you're in.
Yeah.
You know, that you may have to look or want to look outside events
Mhm.
to find people with the energy level, with the ideas, with the, spark that you're looking for. Because a lot of us, we get really burnt out just because it's tough. It's a tough
Well,
business. Yeah.
and I think you both can agree, or like the three of you can agree, doing shit together is actually a lot more fun. The day drinking can be so real. Like, honestly, I want everybody in the chat to let us know, like, what kind of drinks would you want to have with us day drinking? Kiki, I think I know what you're going to go for. And with the cheddar white popcorn. Kiki and I love white cheddar popcorn. That's it.
Who
Enough.
doesn't?
I know. But what I'm saying is this is telling, because if we want to be future resilient and like go and actually get through COVID together, if it comes back as like, I don't know, contagion, part 2, or like, recession, whatever the shit it is, you got to look at partners that you can thrive off of. The energy level is one. Second, just the brainstorming of ideas and saying, yeah, let's do it, because it's going to lessen the fatigue, and it's going to lessen the way of saying my brand can do this part, and I'm going to go rum and coke. So someone really knows me, but is like anonymous on here. But this is where the expansion happens. And Lindsay, you said this before the 9:30. I swear to God, I think from now on we need to record that 9 to 9:28 part, because I think that's where the gold is. But there's a great book by Jeremy Gucci called Exploiting Chaos.
Yes.
And Liz, you mentioned it, where it's like when you take a look and you say, holy shit, there's a recession happening. This is where we can band together and just do things a little bit different. What about the education curve for your clients though? What does that do to their head? Because we have clients that do not budge. The Titanic is real. What do you think?
Can I come back really quick? And though there was one, I think it's this anonymous one who says, how about the freelancer who's worried about posting in social media because of the type of event when it is? And so going to your exploiting chaos, there are several people in Twitter, right, who I had never, ever met in person until March 2020. Then there was a stream that went out and we all put together basically a whole nonprofit and like global movement around banding event profs together, many of whom we've all gone into business ventures together. So, that, like, how do you find new resources you can count on? The internet can be a place that both giveth and taketh away. And if you find your humans inside of that space, yeah, you can do a lot of damage to your personal brand, but then they could also like bond with you over the fact that you all love that same pair of shoes. And going into the topic of education, Dahlia, that's a great way to do it. Like, there's continuous opportunities to showcase right there live on the feeds of the social media and the email vanity metrics to these brands of, if you don't make changes right now, this is what's going to happen. Like, this horrible tragedy, these last 2 weeks, 3 weeks of all of the gun violence is exactly the example. Modev, there was a client we had that worked with Google who they actually just stopped. They stopped all posting. They had a live event that's coming up. They're doing some major, major audience acquisition drives right now, and they stopped all of it. And their CEO went out and said, we aren't going to right now, and here's why you shouldn't either. And this isn't the first time. When we worked with them at the same time George Floyd's funeral was happening, they stopped. And it was a whole thing. We took it to several other of our board of directors for the clients. What you say matters. And that's the best education you can do with your clients. Is it's not about tipping the internal politics of your Titanic inside. It's about explaining to them that if you don't make serious choices and get over your risk averseness, you are going to topple your brand and end up in a completely different PR crisis, and your events, which are incredibly visible and you've been talking a lot about, will become the cycle, and not in a good way. And do
Right.
you want that? Because you're definitely not going to recover financially that way.
Mhm.
Well, and it's going to be remembered, but it's not a positive memory.
Yeah. Sorry, that was like soapbox. My apologies. I was just like, oh,
What's in that coffee?
You took one
Right.
sip and just went.
Liz, what do you think? What do you think is going to start happening in the next couple of years?
Well, that's a
Yes,
big
Liz.
question.
It is.
There you go. You're just gonna like
Yeah.
put the whole world.
Well, other than the gallon of coffee being at what, 150? Something
I know.
like
Well,
that?
see, the thing is,
that's a
like,
cup.
we have
That's a cup.
so many things between all of us that we are talking about. So, like, I have stuff in my mind running from last week's episode that, 30 minutes is only so long that I'm like, oh, yeah, that reminds me of something we were talking about last week. Michelle and I were just talking about next week's topic. Like, now I'm starting to think about that. In terms of what could happen, anything could happen. And I think when you talk about future resilient brands, that's part of it, is that we're not going to be able to predict the future. We are not going to be able to say next year is going to look like this and the budgets are going to look like this. And that's not the point. And I think for as creative as our industry is, we're really not that flexible in my experience. And I think that's so sad because, we are missing so much room for innovation.
Yeah.
Everyone seems to be, I get it. It's the control freak planner. I mean, trust me, I understand that lifestyle.
I was going to say, spoken by someone who loves to have control over.
I love it. I love control. But I think we miss so many opportunities when that's what we're focused on. And so when we're talking about future resilient brands, I think it is all about getting your team together. This is very much how I envision my life all the time. The team, which is a lot of people I don't directly hire who are experts at what they do, the co-opetition thing you're talking about. You love each other and then you just hang on for the ride and you figure it out on the way. You go through and look at 79 venues for one client, which I've never done in 15 years of business, because that's what the market is requiring right now. And I'm learning a whole lot. There's a lot of things, people have come to me lately and said like, hey, what New York City venue? No clue. I couldn't tell you where you should go because half of them are out of business. Half of them have changed their pricing structure. I'm now getting venues who, like, when you call the number to get a human, they tell you to email them, which they never respond to the email. It's a recorded voicemail. They're not even trying to answer the phone. So I think you just have to hang on for the ride. I don't know.
Well, Liz, you said something really good though about being in startup mode. Returning back to kind of the roots of all of our businesses. Talk about that.
I mean, that book, Lean Startup, has driven my life because it was reading that book that I realized I was wasting a lot of my time building things and thinking about what it should be and planning it all out for it to change by the time I spent all my time and money building whatever it was. And that's very much, I've tried to adopt that in my business and also with our events and with all of our clients, is like, let's just focus. I'm also a very minimalist person. So someone came to my house recently and said like, oh, I see you guys are still settling in. And I was like, nope, this is how it is. We're not adding more pictures and knickknacks. This is just, so I think really stripping things down to like, what are you trying to achieve and how can we do that? And a lot of times when we put up our proposals against other clients, they're dramatically cheaper, primarily because we're not adding in the branded gobos and you could do it if you want, but is that actually achieving your goals? Probably not. So I think when I talk about startup mode, it's all about this like constant learning, constant thinking about things from a fresh perspective, only based on what you're trying to achieve and looking at the resources that you have and how the market is and how much money you have. And I think that's the only way to succeed, really.
It's so scary for someone who's called a planner, because that's what you're trained to do, is plan.
Yes.
To make sure that everything is on the to-do list and you check it off, to go into it and just sort of have this attitude of, I'm going to sort of kind of wing it and see, guide it instead of like lock it down. I think it's incredibly scary and exhilarating.
That's why the partnerships are important, because there are, like, for as much of a control freak as I am, I'm actually not a details person at all. So when I work on events, Jennifer Clark with Emerge Events, she and I work together all the time. She is super detail oriented. Like, we've literally had clients send me stuff and I like send it over for printing, and she's like, no, there's huge mistakes on this. I'm like, oh, I didn't even look at it. I just assume like
Sounds like
that's
me.
just, yeah, it just, yeah, you need that mix on your team of people who can just like be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and people who can make it happen and look at the details of it. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, not everyone is comfortable at all with this, but this is the reality. This is the way it is.
I know that we have a mix of planners, suppliers, and we have amazing geniuses that are within corporations as well. And thank you, Brianna, for being our cheerleader. You're going to need a confetti gun next episode. But what I would love to know from everybody listening in, what is your top tip for building and creating a future resilient brand, whether it's for yourself or your company or for the industry? If you can share that. Thank you, Stephanie. In regards to, in the chat, share what your top tip is. And Kristen, it has been a super long time since, I don't know, like years ago, but I would like to know from everybody what your top tip is. And actually, I would like to take it a step further and see if you are interested in some sort of like meetup, or even like a not a workshop, but like just something where we have everybody on screen and we are talking about building future resilient brands. Whether it's God forbid, I'm going to say it, a Zoom meeting, a breakout session, whatever you want to call it. We will bring confetti guns, rum and Coke, and whatever, and white cheddar popcorn as well. But
panel in which we all, take turns and
right,
give each other space.
But I think it lends itself to. I'm going to bring out the crystal ball, because they call me the Dalai Lama for a reason. Where I think the next couple of years, we're going to have exciting startups happening, where it's almost going to be a surge of all this brainwidth, whether they were within companies or they have these ideas and they have a very neat expertise, and they're going to be parts of bigger puzzles. And that's going to be your new blended agency, or your new blended partner, if you will. I'm kind of not excited about the recession. Don't get me wrong, because Liz and I had this conversation. But I get excited about these. It's really bad moments, but they're launch pads for really great opportunities. Does that make sense? Or am I like?
No, I mean, I think it goes back to the crux of why we all do this, right? Like, we do it for the people, we do it for the parties, we do it for the fun, we do it for the day drinking. But like, at the end of the day, we do it for the participants, right? Like, what's our why? We love bringing people together. We love gathering. We love the conversations that happen before, during, after, and like facilitating that in a meaningful way, no matter if you're the details person or the strategist or somewhere in between. And I think that no matter what's in front of us, we've got this real opportunity to continue to attract attendees and turn them into participants who help shape the way that we're going to have events continue to grow and change and learn over the next, 5 months to 5 years. And that's thrilling and terrifying in the same breath. But we're not going to stop having events. And that is, reassuring in a way that nothing else could be, because there was like a 2 to 5 week month period there where we were like, oh God, no more meetings. Shit. So
You said shit. High five.
You're the genius. Maybe it's also learning to live without the fluff.
Yes.
If we're getting back to basics, if we're getting into startup mode, maybe we should think about, if we're going to convene people, and the best part about it is actually the convening and the talking and the interaction. Why do we need to have like clowns and balloons and, I don't know.
Big stages and productions.
Not that I've ever planned any events with clowns or balloons. Well, maybe one. Maybe learning to be comfortable with all without the staging and the dressing around it. figuring out ways and spaces that we can actually just be more intimate and caring and talking instead of all the, you know.
And then when the budgets disappear, you wouldn't be so panicked because you
Yeah.
weren't spending all the money on that stuff in the first place.
Yeah,
Well, guess
be a
what?
good host.
Yeah, no, Bruno, you have a point there, because your brand without the fluff then essentially will be delivering what you said you would
Mhm.
and nothing else. And the event brands have to reconsider, are they delivering to the audience and to their attendees what they said they would, or are they delivering for themselves? So are the clowns and the balloons and confetti and the big LED lights or screens, is it for their C-level and their board, or is it for their audience? Because their audience might necessarily not even care about anything like that. Do they want the $1 million keynote speaker? Or would they rather have like cohorts and couches and sit and, talk about real stuff? What happened like in the last couple of days, how it's impacting them? Or like the four of us, I can see us taking a couch somewhere at an industry event saying, we don't need to go to the general session and be talked to by, Gary V. Let's us be the Gary V's of our industry and figure out how to push as a brand, as co-brands, push our industry forward. I'm up for that. I'll come in with the rum and the Coke and the popcorn for that one.
If you actually look at your attendees, that's what they're already doing anyway. You can have these great events, and if you look, that's the thing. You just have to look at what your attendees actually want, and they're showing you by doing it. Whether you plan the biggest, best event ever, they're going to do what they want. And then if you watch what they're doing, there's so much room there to just serve them. And if we can focus on that, that's what's going to make you the most future resilient, is delivering, as you're saying, Dahlia, delivering what you say you're going to deliver.
Amen.
That's it. Just do it.
And if you can't deliver it, you say, hey, go to Liz or go to Lindsay, please.
Yeah, or we're
Or
working
go to
now.
real estate.
General section, Shonda Rhimes talking about producer porn on the stage, y'all. Like, we can't completely get rid of general sessions. It breaks a girl's heart. The LED screen, I find that I have mixed messages about, but the clowns, I'm 100% with you, Michelle. I just know.
All right, so we are actually 2 minutes over time. This has been fantastic. Thank you all for joining us. And if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do. We're going to share the URL again to the landing page. Love to see if any of you want to be either a lifeline, a guest, any topics that you want to discuss, let us know. And so I don't know if we actually even mentioned, but the name of the show is Cut the Shit, because we do want to cut the shit and we talk about like what everybody's thinking of, and cue the genius. But you do have to understand, so the geniuses are not the people that you see on the screen. The geniuses are the people that are participating through the chat. So you are all geniuses in our book. So we just wanted to reiterate that. And we will see you next Thursday.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.